I wanted to take this quick moment to give you a little background into today's show. This episode became a labor of love. Technical issues were abound, but we were able to work through them. And our special guest author was kind enough to sit down with us again and answer some of our biggest questions. We hope you enjoy this show. So I'm going to let my students take over.
Hi, welcome to Amongst the Books, a podcast for kids, by kids, and yes, adults too. My name is Anthony, and welcome to episode 7. Middle school is hard enough, but having to make new friends proves to be even harder. Today, we are happy to welcome onto the show Kristen Gudsnuk, author of Making Friends and Making Friends Back to the Drawing Board, a book series that embraces all of the ups and downs of middle school with a mix of humor and tenderness. So please join our gang as we talk with Kristen about all things middle school. Take it away, gang.
Thank you for that introduction, and welcome to the podcast, Kristen Gudsnuk, author of Making Friends. We have plenty of questions for you, so here we go. What was your inspiration?
My inspiration for making the book Making Friends was I was thinking about my middle school experience and kind of the things that I liked and didn't like when I was in middle school. And I was like, well, what if I added magic to that? And doing that kind of, gave me this whole big idea for what my characters would do, or what I would do if I had magic as a 7th grader.
In Making Friends, book 2, Back to the Drawing Board, was one of the inspiration for the Piki ball, the Pokemon ball?
Yeah, definitely. This is even nowadays, I have a dog and I'm always I want to go for a walk with her, but then I also want to go places. So I was I wish I had a Pokeball for my dog so bad that I wrote it into there because I just was thinking about it a lot. But also when I was in 7th grade, Pokemon and Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z were all the hot animes because I guess Toonami and Kids WB were showing them. And so it was something that when I was a kid, it was it was really important. Pokemon was huge to me when I was 12 years old. So I kind of wanted to put that in there as a reflection of the kind of things that, at least because I wanted it to be kind of realistic what a 7th grader would be like, and the only way I can really do that is to reminisce about what I used to really be into. But also I always really liked the idea of having a clubhouse or a secret room or whatever, because I always had to share a room when I was younger with my sister, so I always really wanted my own room. And the Piki ball is kind of the perfect awesome kids room, so it was fun to kind of explore what that would be.
Unless you're with a teacher, you are not wired up, you are wired down. Take out a book and read, do some homework, talk to a friend. Thank you.
A good public service announcement right there, folks.
How did you come up with your drawing style?
I came up with my drawing style by looking at things that I liked a lot, anime. Steven Universe was a big one because I liked how they, simplified character designs, but also had everyone have a really interesting dynamic look. Because I wanted it to be a little bit simplified because it makes it easier to draw faster, and also your eyes know where to go when there's fewer lines. It's easier to look at something that's more simplified than something with a lot of details. And like Scott Pilgrim is another like comic that has sort of a similar aesthetic. So I was kind of thinking about those, but also just how my art naturally comes out sort of through that lens is how I came up with that style. But like a huge part of me coming up with it was figuring out something that I thought looked nice, but also that I could draw relatively fast and not have to like agonize over every drawing, because I was like, oh, they're more cartoony. Like if I was drawing like really realistically, it's, you know, it takes just like more time. So that was part of the consideration.
Okay. Can you relate your life to what you wrote in Making Friends?
Oh yeah, definitely. When I was in 7th grade, it was like kind of a hard, well, I don't know how your school system is, but for us, it was like after 6th grade, you go into a middle school. I know some classes or whatever have it happen at different years, but for us, that's what was going on. And like in the book, none of my friends from elementary school were in any of my classes. And so I was around all these kids who I didn't know, and a lot of them knew each other because they had gone to the same elementary school. And so I felt very, it was kind of difficult, like relearning how to fit in after spending my entire like childhood with a group of people who I definitely, I felt more comfortable around. So, I put that into the story, definitely, because any of those years where like there's a big change, it can be really like awkward or hard to get through, but also it's like really memorable. So like for me, that's like 7th grade, then 9th grade for high school, and then freshman year of college. All of those years were like, they're very vivid in my mind because there were so many things changing and going on that in some ways it was helpful setting it in 7th grade, because like I remember that year weirdly like super vivid, probably because it was traumatic.
If you had a magic sketchbook like how Danny did, but in 7th grade, would you make the same choices she did?
I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. No, I know exactly what I would have done, because when I was in 7th grade, I spent a lot of time. Oh my gosh, yeah, I totally would have done it, because I spent a lot of time designing characters, including friends and boyfriends who were evil princes. So like it was very, very similar. But my evil prince was named Aiden, and he was the prince of an evil kingdom. But they weren't actually, the good guy kingdom was secretly the evil kingdom, and the evil kingdom was also evil. It was confusing, but this is I wrote a lot of stories when I was younger. I wrote a lot of stories about these warring kingdoms that I had invented. So yeah, no, I definitely, I don't know if I would have brought them to life, because that takes some gall. But I think that was on my mind, is like making an evil prince and a best friend, and also like money, and probably honestly like the I called it a peaky ball because I didn't want to be sued, but like a pokeball. Those would definitely be the 3 things I would make. And yeah, I would totally clone myself, because see, in clone narratives, you always see someone who like has a big fight with their clone, and their clone is like bad or something. But I'm like, you know yourself better than anyone else, so wouldn't you and your clone get along really well? And I was like, oh, that doesn't make a very dramatic story. But I know if I had a clone, we would really be on the same page about like things, and we would rock.
Right.
I wish I had one.
You would want to try to keep things like so that no one can really tell that it's your clone as opposed to you. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I never understood that, why one always had to be like the evil twin in a sense. Like, why do they have to be so bad?
Yeah, well, in this case, see, it's like there's one thing that you would do if you were like in charge of how the world works, but then in terms of story, you need some sort of conflict. And also, if you I was running into this problem when I was working on book 2, because I was like, if it's literally 2 copies of the same person, it's like it becomes kind of an echo chamber. So I decided to have Danny make her clone like a little bit more confident than herself, because first of all, it would give a contrast between the two,
Right.
and would like she wasn't so different that like she was like a totally different person. She was like a version of herself. So I thought that was a way to get around that problem of having like, oh, all the characters are the same character, you know?
Right, right.
But it's hard. It's actually weirdly hard to write a clone plot, which I didn't realize until I was like halfway through the book.
So what types of books did you enjoy growing up?
When I was a kid, oh my gosh, I really loved to read a lot. And I didn't read that many comics because back in my day, we didn't really have as many comics like that were okay for kids. Well, I also really loved Animorphs, which I don't know if that's still a thing, but it's like about these kids who can like turn into animals to like fight an alien invasion. And there's like 50 books, and they're so good. Yeah, like when I was like a teenager, I have a little brother, and I just like bought all the books on eBay and like read them to him because I was like, oh, you need to read more. And I was like, I want to read Animorphs, but now I'm too old, so here's a good reason. I love like Narnia, Harry Potter. This author, Tamora Pierce, she does like fantasy stuff. Her stuff is so good, and she has a book called Wild Magic about a girl who can like talk to animals. It's fantastic. All sorts of stuff. I'm probably leaving some stuff out. In terms of like manga and stuff, I really loved Inuyasha so much, and like Sailor Moon and stuff like that. But I would just basically read anything.
With the other characters in your book making friends, what inspired you to create them?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, if you guys like to write or want to make comics or whatever, I find that a good way to kind of approach characters who aren't like based on you is to think about your friends and family and people who you know, and kind of, I usually like put people in like a blender where I'm like, oh, this person's kind of like so-and-so meets so-and-so, or like this is like this girl I was friends with when I was in 7th grade, but plus also this family member of mine, you know, because I want to make them their own thing, but I kind of like try to take my understanding of the people who I know in real life, and like, you know how like in your head you can kind of think about how like your mom would react to you saying something versus like your best friend, how they would react. Yeah. You use that like knowledge to like sort of make sure that your characters act different, and also that they act sort of consistently. So like if you have like a little grounding thing where you're like, well, they have the moral code of my big sister, then you have a good like starting place to make sure that your character feels like a person. So I usually I take bits and pieces from people that I know, but also I fake it. I also make things up a lot.
Well, you got it, right?
Yeah. So that you don't offend them.
How long did it take you to write these books?
Yeah, it depends. I'm actually really fast at writing. So the writing part, I usually do it in a week or 2 weeks or something, and then I take a break from it and I revise it a bunch. You know, I keep just reading over it and just being like finding anything that bothers me and trying to fix it, seeing if something doesn't make sense or whatever. I just check through it a bunch. So yeah, that's actually the fastest part, is the writing part. Although before I write, there's like this, there's like a period of me figuring out what's going to happen, which is a form of writing. Like, you know, you're plotting it out in your head. You're figuring out what happens next, what goes wrong for your characters and stuff like that. And so that part takes a long time, but it's like on the back burner and like the back of your head, like, you know, when you're taking a shower, you just start kind of thinking about your characters or whatever. So that's like a couple of months usually. So I guess it's a mix between that. Yeah.
Who's your favorite Sailor Scout from Sailor Moon, and which is your favorite Pokemon?
Oh man. It's hard. So when I was younger, I really liked Sailor Venus. I think it's because she was famous and she had glasses. Like, I love that she was like the one Sailor Scout that the rest of the world knew about, and like she had her own video game and stuff, and she had her own cat. But then it's so hard, because then I rewatched it and I was like, oh, I love Sailor Moon herself is just like the best character. She's so funny, and I relate to her a lot. And then also Sailor Jupiter is just fantastic. And Sailor Uranus. These are like my top 4. But then I love all of them. They're honestly like the best characters ever. Like, I adore all of them, because Sailor Mars is like really fun. And the only one I'm not crazy about, I think, is like Sailor Mercury, which is, everyone likes her, but I was like, oh, okay, I get it. She's smart. I want more. I don't know. Yeah.
I don't think you're a fan of Sailor Moon at all, based on that. I think, I really don't think you are.
So what is your writing and drawing process?
Usually I have like these, I have them right here because I was writing something else like a few days ago. I usually write out just general ideas on note cards, and I like sort of flip through them and put them in order, and kind of any like little random idea I have where I don't know where it would go, I just write it down, see if it fits in. If it doesn't, I just take it out of the stack, and then I use that as an outline, kind of type it all up into like, you know, paragraphs. And from that point on, I use that sort of more complicated outline. I have like, you know, the plot figured out, and then I figure out like the dialogue and like the other stuff, and like the actual writing part where you're like in the characters' heads and stuff. So that's usually how I write. And then basically I have a finished script that I'm mostly happy with. I might have a couple things that I know I'm going to change, and I do change things when I'm drawing. Like, I'll think of little things. So it's not like it doesn't change at all from there, but I try to keep to the script more or less, just for my own sanity. And I do layouts, which are like really quick, like sketches of each page, kind of like little stick figures and stuff like that. And then I tidy that up and I ink it. And this is here's a page I'm working on right now. You can see like this part is done, and then this part isn't.
Very
so
cool.
Looks pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, I'm trying to like finish before Christmas.
You have 4 or 5 days. You got it.
Yeah. I know, but I have like 5 pages left to draw. I guess that's fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I like to ink it traditionally using like pens and like, you know, brushes and stuff like that. And then I scan it, I bring it into the computer, I fix it up, because even as a professional artist, you still make tons of mistakes. At least I do. Like, where I'm like, oh, this head is perfect, but it's so way too big for the rest of their body. So I just have to like Photoshop it and shrink it. I do that so frequently. So like, that's kind of then I color it, and then that's basically my process. I just do that over and over again until I'm done with the book, which takes quite a while.
What's your favorite cartoon from childhood?
That's so hard. Okay. Well, when I was a kid, Lion King was like my favorite thing in the world. And actually, so I don't know if this was because I was like a burgeoning anime nerd and they stole the plot from Kimba the White Lion. But they did. Look it up. No. So like Lion King was just my thing when I was little, and I remember the summer that it came out, we saw it in theaters like 3 times, and then a family friend went to New York City and came back with a bootleg VHS of the Lion King. Like it was from a theater, like you could see people's like the back of people's heads. And we just watched it like constantly. Yeah, so that was a huge one for me. Then I also I really loved all the Nicktoons when I was little, like Doug and Rugrats, stuff like that. I don't even know if you kids know that stuff, although like the 90s are back, so you might. And I loved Invader Zim was one that I really loved. Like I said, like 5 times, Sailor Moon was a bit of a big deal to me. I would tape that also, like, because sometimes I would have to miss it because it was right after school. So if I was like staying at school later, so I would have just like my VCR going all day so that I could record just like half an hour of Sailor Moon. There were a lot. I'm probably leaving some out, but basically anything that was a cartoon in the 90s I watched. I didn't necessarily like it, but I watched it all.
Are you still a big anime fan now?
Yeah, definitely. Although I don't have as much spare time now because of all the stuff I have to do, but I do watch. I watch like Mob Psycho, which is really good, and My Hero Academia, and I read a lot of manga on the Shonen Jump app, which I have. It's just like you pay like $2 a month or something, and you can read like all their manga. I still love it, although not with the intense fervor of my youth, but I think that was just my hormones making me just go crazy about everything.
So do you recommend any maybe like outliners or like for your art, like for young artists like me, because I use Micron and Plumchester? Like, which ones do you use?
Oh yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, I'm glad that you guys are like up and coming artists too. I use Microns. My desk is like littered with them right now. I have so many Microns. I have actually. I think Amazon like automatically orders like 10 Microns every like 3 months for me and mails them to me. And I was like, why do I keep getting these? And I was like, I must have done this at some point. There's this pen called Tombow Fudonosuke, and here's one of them. It's really great. I don't think that this is really going to show it to you, but it basically has like a brush tip. This is not going to lend well to the audio part, but like this is kind of what the packaging looks like. It's Tombow Fudonosuke brush pens. There's a blue one and a green one. And the blue one is a little thinner, and the green one's thicker. Or it has like a more bendy tip. The tip of it like looks like a normal pen, but like the tip kind of bends, so you get a good line variation. I use this to do so many of my comics. So usually I'll use these kind of brush pens or an actual brush if I really want to go really dramatic with the line width for like foreground or characters. And then I'll use Microns for backgrounds so that the characters pop to the front, because they have a thicker line, and then the background will recede. But also, if the character's really tiny, I'll just use a Micron. So I use these for like detail, and then I use these brush pens for sort of, you know, nice bold lines.
When did you realize that you were such a good drawer?
Well, thank you. I don't know. Just now. No. I never was like that particularly great at drawing when I was younger. I just really liked it. So I found it fun to draw. I wasn't super concerned with like being the best or whatever. I just found a certain catharsis or whatever from making art. So I just kept doing it, and all it is practice, because once you practice something a lot, no matter what it is, as long as you're practicing it in a way that is kind of challenging. So like if you are practicing just drawing a smiley face over and over again, you're not going to get better. Like you'll be able to draw a really great smiley face, but you won't get better. But if you learn how to do that smiley face really well, and then you start drawing a little bit more complicated things, you keep pushing yourself to do things more complicated looking or whatever, you'll just sort of naturally improve. And, you know, it's 95% just practice and sticking with things. And I'd say that if you, it seems like a lot of you kids really like to draw, which makes me happy. If you do like to draw, just focus on drawing the things that you like and have fun doing it, because the great thing, I mean, art is really fun to do, you know, like, so if you're drawing something that makes you happy to draw it, it doesn't even feel like you're doing work. And then you look up and you're like, oh my gosh, I've spent like X amount of time drawing this stuff. And like, you don't even realize that you're working because you're enjoying yourself. And that's a great thing to like do, because it just makes it all go faster and makes it more fun. It makes you like associate art with like having fun. So I think it's important to draw what you like.
Are you also a Marvel and DC fan? Because I see the Batman on the shelf.
Well, those are actually my boyfriend's. Well, my shelf is like blocked by my head, but I am. Okay. Yes, he has an enormous library of comics. We make a good power couple, because if I'm ever like, oh, I need a reference for this kind of thing, or like I want a recommendation, he's just like, it's like that Beauty and the Beast moment where he's like, here's my library. But yeah, no, I definitely. When I was growing up, I didn't really like that stuff, because at the time, I don't know, comics didn't seem very, like, it didn't seem for me in the way that, like, manga did, but, like, as an adult, I definitely have really enjoyed a lot of DC and Marvel comics, but also, like, the movies. I watch every superhero movie that comes out. They're good stuff.
Okay. I have a random question. What is your zodiac sign?
Oh, yeah, I am a Cancer.
Okay. So what would you say is your favorite part of the writing process and drawing process?
Let's see. For writing, I really like it. I like the whole thing, more or less. I don't like it when I have to come up with in the beginning. Like, that's kind of scary, because you're like, I don't know what to do. And it's a little overwhelming. But once you kind of have decided on a couple things and you're on a roll, I guess that's my favorite part, is when I'm on a roll and things are coming easily. It's just really fun. And when things aren't coming easily, it's my least favorite part. But you just got to get through that to get to the parts where, you know, you hit your groove or whatever. And for art, so like I was saying before, there's a part of the process where you draw little like stick figure versions of your characters and stuff, and it's called layouts. And it's funny because it's the least like artistically, it doesn't use as much of your actual like hand-eye coordination in terms of drawing stuff. But I find that part to be so mentally tiring, because you have to like keep in mind like, oh, how are these little pictures going to like interact with each other? You know what I mean? Like each panel and stuff. And I find that part, it's fun, but it makes me really, really tired really fast. Like my brain gets tired. And the inking part, which is like I have all the drawing basically done and I'm just going over it with like my pens and like my inks. That's my favorite part, especially because recently I started listening to audiobooks while I ink, and it's really fun because it's like you get to read and you're drawing.
Yeah, I love listening to audiobooks because I'm able to do it like something else while I'm still getting my reading time in a sense. So I love it.
Yeah, I listened to like over 60 books this year.
Yeah, I know. More technical issues hit us. Due to an unexpected weather alert on our phones, our feed got cut off. But we were able to get back up online and finish the interview. So here we are without any more delays. We hope you enjoy.
With your coloring in the background, do you get someone else to do it, or do you do it yourself?
When I started out, I was doing it all myself. And I mainly do it myself. But currently what I do is I have a black and white page and I send it out to a freelancer called a flatter, and they just basically color everything in the lines, but they color everything in mostly in the wrong colors, like in really bright, like crazy colors, so that I can, make sure to change things. So that basically I can just drag and drop the correct colors in, and I don't have to like painstakingly, color everything in perfectly myself. So I do have freelancers who assist me in that part, but I still do figure out the color schemes and I finalize the pictures, because when I get them, they look like just rainbows of just colors that are not correct for what the scene is supposed to be. Right. But it's really helpful and it saves me some time. So I definitely do that. That's something that like pro comic people do a lot.
Right. All right. We have our one final one.
Are you coming out with anything soon?
I do have some new stuff on the horizon for next year, but as far as I know, I was told not to talk about it until they tell me I can, so I can't say. But I do have some cool new stuff coming out that y'all should definitely keep an eye out for. I'm working on like 4 different things right now. So,
what if we promise we won't share it with anybody?
Okay, sure, yeah. I'm doing. Wait, for real?
No, I mean. Okay, so I personally want to say thank you so much for, number one, sitting down with us again. This was a treat yet again. Technical difficulties abound. We made it work this time.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. I know my students here are all my budding artists right here, that this was a thrill for them. And we really do. We look forward to all of your future work because we are big fans of your stuff.
Oh, thank you so much. And best of luck to all of you. Keep it up with your art and make comics. And thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
You're amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right. Have a wonderful holiday.
Bye.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. A very special thanks to Kristen Gudsnuk for joining us today and letting us learn about your process and inspiration. To learn more about Kristen, the Making Friends series, and her other works, visit www.KristenGudsnuck.com. Follow her on Twitter at henchgirl_comics. Today's episode was produced by Miss S in the school's library. Thank you for all our wonderful hosts today. You could follow Amongst the Books on Twitter at amongstthebooks_podcast and on Instagram at Amongst the Books Podcast. Our theme music was written, performed, and recorded by Jake Thistle. You could follow Jake at www.jakethistle. That's JakeThistle.com. You could find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe and rate us, and be sure to share us with all of your friends. My name is Anthony. Thanks for listening. You will be hearing from us soon.